Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called You Want to Fire Me for That? This happened a few years back. I was working in the IT help desk of a well-known restaurant based in Chicago. I had gotten the job through the help of a friend of mine. He was the help desk manager at the time. My friend was very adamant about checking in on the help desk tickets metrics and making sure that everyone in the team was pulling their own weight. Basically, for those who don't know, most help desks use a ticketing system to keep track of all IT requests that come in. Anyway, my friend was known for being good about his particular ticket metrics tracking. He was able to decipher them and later present them to the leadership team. However, he was laid off due to a scrabble he had with one of the directors of a different department. This had happened at the same time that a new CIO was hired. In comes a new IT manager. He had eventually admitted to me that he was actually close friends with the CIO and that he had never held a management position ever in his life. I found out that his skill set was in programming and scripting, but his weakness was confrontation as well as other management procedures. However, his biggest flaw was that he followed processes and procedures to the letter. One of those being that we were not allowed to discuss any tickets with anyone. This was supposed to be interpreted as the helpdesk not being able to discuss tickets with other individuals outside of the IT department due to the sensitivity of their nature. But if I brought up a ticket to my manager, he would shut me up and say he didn't want to hear about it. About a month went by when the time came for my metrics evaluations. I was escorted into a conference room by my manager. He tells me that out of all the individuals of the IT helpdesk, I had the most reopened tickets in the queue. I should mention that by this point of my time working there, my manager had decided to push my shift from the regular first shift, 9 to 5, over to the second shift, which was from 1 to 10. This was to provide coverage for shops outside of our time zone. I explained to him that there was a plethora of reasons why I had reopened tickets. One is that every day that I came in, I was stuck working at the mass amount of tickets that the morning shift neglected to touch. I was on my own working from 6 to 10. And ultimately, the main reason for reopens I could not discuss, per his policy. He got really angry with me and said that I needed to improve my numbers and get fewer reopened tickets. Instead of arguing, I simply complied and went on my way. Another month went by, and by this time I had accrued more tickets in my name, which also meant more tickets being reopened. I get called into a meeting again. This time it's with my boss, the CIO, and the head of human resources. They bring up my reopened ticket count. And I, again, explain the same gripes from the past. They placed me on a corrective action program. And they simply told me, if you can't fix it by the next time we meet, we are going to have to fire you. My immediate response was, well, if you fire me, I will seek legal counsel. I told you that I cannot discuss my tickets with you thanks to my manager's strict policy guidance. He has the ability to go look at the tickets, but refuses. The CIO threatened to get the ticket system vendor to send a specialist to get a fully detailed report to see just how bad I was doing. I kept my cool and simply said, sure, let's go with that. If you see that I really have been failing, then I will voluntarily quit. The following week, the vendor shows up and he is set up in one of the conference rooms. I would swing by from time to time, asking if he needed anything. He knew who I was by this point. All he would say is, this is funny as heck, I can't wait to provide this report. Towards the end of the day, I get called into the conference room. I see my manager, the CIO, the head of HR, the vendor, and now even the CEO of the company. My manager is pale, as if he had seen a ghost. The CIO couldn't look me in the eye and was at a loss for words. I broke the silence and, without trying to appear smug, I asked, is everything alright? The vendor excitedly announces, well kids, the only thing you are guilty of is being a damn good employee. The CEO immediately interrupted and apologized on behalf of the company for having put me through so much crap. At this point I knew exactly what happened, but I wanted to hear it straight from the source. I look at the vendor and ask him to read out the rest of the report. He then says, with you being the only individual to close the most tickets compared to all of your colleagues combined, you have a reopen rate of about 95%. Out of that 95%, only 2% are reopened due to the fixes not sticking or due to a completely irrelevant issue. He turned to the CEO. You all should let your employees know to create new tickets rather than reopening a previous ticket. As for the other 93%, they are all people responding, thanking you for your work. He almost couldn't contain his laughter while presenting the physical report. He further went on to mention that all this could have been avoided had I been able to discuss these tickets with my boss. Or if my boss even bothered to actually go look at the tickets themselves. About another month later, my boss tells me that he wants to promote me to the IT lead position as well as give me a raise. But I turned it down. It was a perfect opportunity for me, and I told him I was putting in my 2 weeks notice. He tried talking me out of it, but there was no way he could convince me. I basically told him that any confidence and trust I had with the company was destroyed during my earlier debacle. My raise at the time was withheld due to his own mistakes, and there was no way the company would be able to match the offer I was being given at my new gig. A few weeks later, one of my previous colleagues had informed me that my manager had been outed for his lack of experience. However, things got even messier. It turned out that one of the directors, specifically the one who got my original friend fired, had been caught up in an embezzlement scandal. This roped in his own team, the CIO, and my manager. Apparently, they were all in cahoots with another vendor, accepting bribes to keep using that vendor's services. So a large chunk of the IT department had been eviscerated. Well, that sounds like a wild ride. I'm glad he's out of there. Have you ever had someone like that being promoted to be your boss? Let me know. The next story is called Change of Schedule. This happened many moons ago, like 20 years. I used to work in a restaurant as a hostess and a part-time buzzer. I always took the weak section other buzzers didn't like because they were less busy and running dish tops killed my back. But someone has to take those sections, right? Might as well be me. I was a hostess for 4 days and I buzzed the other day. The manager of the hostesses was okay, but she was kind of a jerk sometimes. One night, someone puked in the woman's restroom. The hostess manager asked me to clean it up. I told her sorry, I'm not qualified for that. She gave me a blank look and said, "Excuse me? Go and clean it." So I told her that I have not been trained in the proper disposal of bodily waste, and that it's against OSHA rules to handle said waste without the proper training. She didn't like this, but she knew I was right. So she made a different hostess clean it up and glared daggers at me for the rest of the night. I think the hostess manager was miffed about the above incident and slightly had it out for me. The hostess schedule used to be random and everyone would get varied shifts, opening, mid, closing. Nobody liked closing because the closing shift had to clean everything. The hostess manager suddenly decides that the hostess crew is going to go to fixed shifts. Now, I was in a play in college, so I could only work certain hours. We had the staff meeting during the hours I couldn't attend. I wasn't even informed of the meeting. She then assigned everyone a permanent shift. Guess what shift I got? Yep, closing. And this is where the malicious compliance starts. Like most jobs, you are required to give a 2-week notice if you are going to quit. Plus, it's a good thing to do if you don't want them trashing you to your future employer. So I gave my notice to the manager of the busing staff. I figured as long as I give it to a manager, it didn't matter who. They all belong to the same company and work together. Plus, I didn't want to see the hostess manager since I was ticked at her. Apparently, the buzzer manager never shared my notice with the hostess manager. My next scheduled shift after my 2 weeks was up, and I got an angry call from her. "Why aren't you here? Or why isn't there a replacement here for you if you are sick?" We were required to call every coworker to try to cover our shift if we couldn't make it. Sometimes, if we couldn't find anyone, they would still try to make us come. I told her I don't work there anymore. I gave my notice. She said, "No, you didn't. I never received it." I told her I gave it to the other manager. She tried telling me that I had to give one to her too. And that since I didn't, she would count me as a no-call, no-show and note in my employee file that I was fired. But I argued the heck out of that one, and she finally dropped it. I also called the buzzer manager to talk to him about it. He laughed and told me not to worry about it, that it was all good. I always wondered if maybe he didn't like her either. Not a total in-your-face take that kind of moment, but it sure made me feel good that she now had to scramble to fill my position. The funny thing is, all the hostess staff knew I was leaving because I told them when it was my last day. None of them said a word to her. The last story is called A Bad Way to Save Money. I had a job where I had a computer. This computer was incidentally also the web server for a very important internal web application. I thought this was really stupid that it wasn't in a server room being managed by IT. But for some weird reason they wouldn't do it. I didn't use this application or have anything to do with it. But it took up a large chunk of the hard drive and made it slow. I didn't even know what it was on the hard drive. There was a bunch of old development software I could never remove for fear of harming the application. I was also not permitted to turn the machine off or even sign out nights or weekends, so it would be running whenever anyone needed the application. I had to just lock the screen and leave it. This application was apparently something developed by my department before I joined the company. Everyone involved with it was no longer there. And nobody really knew anything about how it worked other than this machine had to be running and signed in. It wasn't developed in our normal system and wasn't in our code repository. By the end of my time with the company, they had such turnover that I was literally the only person in the department who knew it was even there. I was a web developer and I required a vast amount of disk space for my work. This was mostly related to how moronic management was about the process. I had to keep 3 complete copies of everything the company ever developed. So I often ran out of disk space. I had to use increasingly desperate measures to deal with this. This actually included deleting anything that Microsoft included with Windows that I didn't actually need, like the camera app on a PC with no camera. Quickly got to the point that I had to call IT to tell them my PC was becoming unusable due to disk space. I asked if they could please do something about it. I suggested that because of this application, they might want to take this PC into management and give me a different one. I thought they would do something like replace the computer or give it a larger internal disk or maybe even just attach an external disk. But they told me that I would have to remove what I could and defrag the disk to make more space. And I would just have to suffer, and please don't call them about this again. I talked to my boss and was told that IT's word was final and I would just have to deal with it. It got worse. I would remove what I could and start a defragmentation, and the machine would become too slow for me to use for about 24 hours, during which time I could do no work. This happened about once a week, so it took about 1/5 of my time. I kept telling Mengelman this was happening, and they kept telling me to shut up and deal with it. But at least when they wanted me to do stuff, and it was, I can't, my computer is busy clearing disk space and is presently unusable, they moaned but understood and left me alone. Because the company was unwilling to spend $100 on an external hard drive, they got to spend over $22,000 a year on salary for me to sit around and wait for the machine to make some space so I could do my work. That wasn't my salary. That was the portion of my salary that they were wasting on this problem. Not counting the value of the time of everyone else that had to do my work while I couldn't. It was getting to the point that I wouldn't be able to deal with it at all. There wasn't anything left to delete, and defragging wasn't reclaiming any more space. And the company's internal software took up more and more space every day. I estimated I had about a week left before it became fully unusable. But then I had major health problems and never went back. I occasionally think, with admittedly some glee, of the panic it must have caused when they, no doubt, turned off the computer and sent it to IT to be wiped. And a few hours later, panicked users started calling, demanding to know where their precious application that they couldn't live without was. Only for my evil Mengelman to say, honestly, what application? Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe. I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.